Welcome, sleuths, suspects, and witnesses. This is day 23 of our wacky little mystery party. This is just getting so much fun. I mean, various points we were out of hand, and then we were even more out of hand, and then we were subdued, and now I'm so confused. I don't know what's going on. However, what I do know is that I will be working really hard to keep us to this regular nightly schedule so that I only interrupt your evening for an hour tonight, and then you can get back to your regularly scheduled lives. Tonight on our reading hit parade, Jacob Bullen is going to be reading for us, and that's his snazzy family there pictured with him. And Deborah Reed is going to be reading for us as well. We're going to have a really good time. These are two really fun, super amazing stories. We're going to have a good time. Jacob, I'm going to ask you to read first, if you will, please. Jacob is reading from his book, Betrayer. Can you hold that up real close to the camera so we can see the cover pretty, please? There it is, Betrayer. And when you are ready, Jacob, please take the microphone and read aloud.
Okay. I did want to note that the language between the male and female protagonist is broken because of learning each other's languages. Just a prop for those.
Awesome.
Aya panted heavily as she stared down her remaining attackers. 3 lay dead at her feet, though she still stared down another 5. Wounds decorated both her legs and arms, making her slow and unsteady. Her breathing was ragged and hasty, and her vision blurred. She clutched confidently to her glaive as she drew in as deep a breath as she could manage. The men staring back at her did so with an air of caution, brandishing several bleeding wounds of their own. One man held a firm grip over his jaw, which bled heavily from a slash of her blade. She smirked at the men and spat towards them defiantly. The one nearest to her stepped backwards, flinching. Receiving a look of shame from his comrades, they each took up arms and charged. 2 of the men standing back held out their arms and willed the earth to destroy their enemy. Shapings rising to ensnare her, Aya swept the roots away with her glaive as she charged. Reaching behind her back, she pulled a small knife and threw it, striking one man in the stomach. He buckled, tumbling to the ground as she leapt forward, stabbing at one of the other 2. She winced as the man's axe grazed her thigh. Thrusting, she drove the blade of her weapon deep into the man's chest, puncturing through his right lung. Striking the ground, her wounded thigh gave out and she fell forwards. Sweeping her weapon, she managed to clip the side of the 3rd warrior. Landing with a heavy thud, she felt her weapon forced from her hand as her head struck the ground. Her entire world spinning, she attempted to press herself from the ground, but her legs would no longer hold her. Bringing herself to her knees, she looked to the 2 standing shapers who drew nearer. "You put up quite the fight," the man whose jaw was still intact spoke for his fellow, "but it is time to put you down like the rest of your filthy kind." A flash of pain gripped Aya, forcing her eyes towards the wound on her thigh. Vines slowly crawled up her leg and burrowed their way into the gash on her leg. A guttural scream poured from her throat as the vines shoved their way deeper inside, pressing between her skin and muscles. "No sense in resisting," the man laughed, stepping forwards and kicking Aya on the left side. "Those vines will eventually tear into your organs, killing you." The man moved to kick her a second time, though the pain only served to focus her. Gripping the man's boot, she wrenched on his leg with both hands, tripping him. The man yelped as he fell to the ground, though Aya was upon him before he could raise a proper defense. Hands gripping his head, Aya closed the distance between them and bit deeply into his throat. A strong kick to her ribs threw her onto her back, though the damage was already done. Spitting the hunk of flesh from her mouth, she listened as the man gurgled his last breaths. Her next warning of pain came from a pair of boot steps, just before she felt the sole of a boot clenching down on her throat. Looking up, she stared into the eyes of the man with the ruined face. Pain returned to her thigh as the vines resumed their creeping beneath her flesh. Gripping tightly to the man's ankle, she attempted to throw him off in vain as her world closed in around her. As the corners of her vision darkened, she watched as her attacker's head was thrown backwards, and he fell from sight. Her eyes opened wider as she heard the man's body fall to the ground. Her lungs filled with air, and the searing pain of encroaching vines ceased. Scrambling to her knees, she reached down with trembling hands, gripping the tendrils, and pulled. She screamed as the slithering beneath her flesh reversed. With a last heaving jerk and cry of fury, she felt the pain subside and fell forwards. Her stomach clenched as the adrenaline began to leave her veins. The taste of blood in her mouth, a sudden urge rose within her, forcing her to heave aggressively. Choking on the taste of bile and vital fluid, she snatched the flask from the nearest dead man and washed her mouth. Kana! The name refocused her senses. Snapping to, she took another swig from the flask and rinsed her mouth. Spitting, she slowly traced her eyes behind her and saw a familiar face at the far edge of the platform. Kana? She answered back uncertainly. Strength slowly returning to her body, she rose to her feet and wiped her mouth. The man stood, half slumped over, another arrow held limply against his bow. Blood trickled freely from his side, and the clothing beneath his wolf's head cloak was burned and tattered. Panting just as heavily as she, he called her once more. Kana, she yelled, relief flooding her veins. Dragging her wounded leg behind her, she did her best to run to him. Dropping his bow, Volley gripped tightly to his side as it burned with pain. Hobbling towards his Kanadesh, a warmth filled his heart. Ignoring the throbbing of his exhausted body, he limped across the great plateau, even as he felt the earth slowly shifting back into position. As the distance separating them closed, Aya fell forwards, throwing her arms around Volley's shoulders. Kana, she cried, burrowing her head into his chest and crying. Both their bodies fatigued, they collapsed to their knees and embraced one another. Think it's safe to stop there because I have company now.
Well done. Tell Logan we said hello. Great job. There's Mr. Logan. Good job. Well done, Jacob. Can you hold up your book one more time so that we can all see it? This is Jacob's book called Betrayer. It's a super fun story. If you guys get a chance, definitely check it out. Deborah, I think that means you're up next.
I'm not sure how to follow that. I was like literally rubbing my thigh as he was reading about the vines, going, oh my gosh, I'm feeling it. I'm this.
Okay, Deborah is going to read from her book, The Disaster Called Rue Taylor. There you go. It's a very cool cover, Deborah. I just want to let you know. I just thought it was really cool the first time I saw it. Very cool. All right, when you are ready, ma'am, please take the microphone and read aloud.
All right. I'm starting in the middle of chapter 4, about there. My next class was biology, and it was all the way across the school. Since Mr. Pritchard didn't give me a note excusing me if I was late, I hustled, for once in my life not wanting to get into more trouble. I slid through the doorway just as the bell sounded, causing Ms. Blaine to glance at me over her glasses as she stood up from behind her desk. But she didn't say anything. Flopping down onto a stool at one of the workstations, I dropped my bag and tried not to think about how sweat made my shirt stick to my back. Gross. There were 3 other kids at the table, 1 beside me and 2 across from me. The guy beside me had a staring problem, his thick glasses making his eyes seem bug-like. Since being stared at was a pet peeve of mine, I was already in a questionable mood from having to Indy 500 it through the halls. I glared back until he flushed and switched his gaze to the tray in front of him, which had a frog on it, a dead frog. And there was one in front of me, too. I groaned inwardly. I'd forgotten that Ms. Blaine had informed the class that today we would begin dissecting frogs. My mood just took a nosedive. The smell of formaldehyde made my nose twitch. Forget the sweat. This was definitely more gross. Taking a deep breath, which was a mistake considering the chemicals and odor of death that now invaded my sinuses, I tried to be a good little student and pay attention. After all, I was being handed a scalpel, and who knew what trouble I'd get into for wielding one of those in a questionable manner. I was in the process of peeling the skin off the carcass in front of me and trying not to vomit when I heard a commotion across the room. Glancing up, I noticed 2 guys had moved closer to a girl with gorgeous long blonde hair. It was so beautiful and shiny. I'd noticed her hair yesterday before it registered that she had physical characteristics indicating Down syndrome. My eyes narrowed as one of the guys picked his skinned frog and made it do a macabre dance in front of the girl. To her credit, she ignored him, the tip of her tongue sticking out just slightly from between her lips as she continued trying to skin her own frog. The second guy didn't appreciate that the girl wasn't freaking out about the dancing amphibian or paying any attention to his friend, and hooked her tray with his finger, moving it out of her reach. Glancing across the room, I searched for Ms. Blaine, But she had propped open the door to the supply room and had moved out of sight, searching for something. I looked back at the spectacle unfolding, the frog's pale skinned legs, now doing a dance on top of that beautiful hair. The girl continued to sit stoically, eyes straight ahead, as she endured the harassment with a long-suffering look. Obviously, this treatment wasn't new. My own gaze darted around the room, wondering if someone would step up and tell the guys to knock it off. Everyone was watching, but no one seemed bothered. In fact, they were grinning and laughing, nudging each other with their elbows. One kid even had his phone out and was recording it all. Maybe it was the fact that I'd already endured a lecture from a teacher, or maybe it was the fact that I'd had to run all the way across the school and got all sweaty. Or maybe it was just me and the fact that I participated in and instigated a lot of dubious acts, but I drew the line at bullying. Or maybe it was the way the girl sat so regally, bearing the heinous acts against her with grace instead of anger. Whatever the reason, I went from calm to pissed off in about 2 seconds flat. Hey, I shoved off from my stool, Converse sneakers hitting the floor with a loud thwack. No one even noticed. Hey. Now I was striding across the room, weaving between the workstations with adrenaline surging through my veins. People were starting to pay attention now. In fact, the phone recording the fun now swung in my direction. Knock it off, I growled, slapping the kid's hand with the frog away from the girl's head. It was at that moment I remembered her name, Heather. Seriously, what are you, a toddler? Stop being so immature. A soft ooh snaked through the classroom, causing the boy's jaw to tighten and his eyes to narrow. He wasn't used to being challenged. Football, I bet, a jock who ruled the school. And I was new enough to not know about his social superiority and stay away from him. Little did he know that I cared exactly zero about anyone's social superiority. You're new here, the boy said, acid dripping from each word. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds to back the heck up. You tell her, Dean, came faintly from somewhere behind me. Well, now I knew the name of the guy I was about to punch in the face. Oh, how nice of you to remind me that I'm new. I had no idea. I batted my eyelashes in fake adoration, then dropped the act, my expression hard. And I don't need 5 seconds to know it better be you who backs the heck up. There was an audible gasp somewhere behind me. I had to refrain from rolling my eyes. I managed, barely. It helped to focus on the vein, now pulsing in Dean's forehead. What did you just say to me? Dean squared off to me, frog still dangling from his fingertips. I met him glare for glare. I didn't stutter. Dean's face was now an interesting shade of red I'd never seen before. You're going to eat this frog in a second if you don't back off. You first, on both counts. It was coming. I could feel it. My skin tingled with the knowledge of what was about to happen. Gabe's voice was in my head instantly. Let them attack you first, then it's self-defense. Always let them hit first. Dean's fist shot out. Whether to hit me or grab me so he could begin force-feeding me the frog, I'll never know. I leaned back, easily dodging his hand, then slightly bent my knees and swept one leg in an arc, hooking Dean's ankles and pulling his legs out from under him. He went down hard, gasps echoing around the room as the reverberating thud of his back connecting with the floor made trays and frogs dance on the counters. The skinned amphibian in Dean's hand went flying, skittering across the floor and disappearing under a bookshelf up against the far wall. I had about 2 seconds before Dean was able to get his breath back. I was counting on the fact that the fall had knocked the wind from his lungs, essentially paralyzing him for just a few seconds and giving me an opening. Placing one foot on either side of his body so I was straddling him, I leaned down and fisted both of my hands in his t-shirt, lifting his upper body so we were much closer. It was an effort. The guy must lift weights in his free time, but I didn't let it show on my face. Last warning, leave Heather alone or eating that frog will be the least of your worries. Ms. Taylor. I released Dean's shirt and stepped to the side, trying not to let the dread sweeping through my chest make an appearance in my expression. Of course, this was the exact moment Ms. Blaine would emerge from the storage room. Of course it was. Well, I'd save her some trouble. Striding over to my workstation, I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. Ms. Rodriguez wouldn't be surprised to see me show up in her office. In fact, I was betting she already had a chair waiting with my name on it. I left biology without looking back. Diana, you're
Diana,
muted.
muted. But yes,
Charlie
Yeah.
Charlie was barking and I didn't want him to interrupt you.
I
So
thought we
yes,
went into sign language there for a moment.
Very good.
I could have. Next time I will. Yeah, Charlie was being very loud. So thank you very much, Jacob and Deborah, for your readings tonight. Very fun, very cool. Now we have more books to put on our TBRs. This is the best part of the night. So much fun. Okay, Charlie's going to be difficult, so I apologize in advance. All right, here we go. On to the mayhem of the evening. The case of the assassinated author. Not long ago, here in this sleepy little library of ours, Andrew Allen Smith stole the sardonic manuscript, but before he could get it out the front doors, he was assassinated, dropped dead in a pile on the floor, apparently poisoned. Who is the culprit and why did they do the deed? Our suspects are many. Let's remind you who they are. Chloe is a mysterious character. Melinda Falco is a researcher who, by the way, I have not seen in the room yet tonight. Ruby Fink is our psychic who is also interestingly absent. Christopher Gare, our not so undercover detective. Amy Kelso, the very studious head librarian. Jules Nelson is our library director. Marianne Wieland is the cafe manager. The cafe is adjacent to the library. And Deborah Reed, our ever intrepid reporter, out for that really important Pulitzer Prize. So everybody, please turn on your microphones, grab your notes from the month's interrogations, and let's get the questions started. Who would like to begin this evening?
I guess I could just go ahead and
Go,
start.
Amy.
I did hear from my darling mother. She finally replied to me. It took forever, but I did confirm the name of my grandmother. Apparently it's Desdemona Smith or something. I don't know, something like that. So, yeah, apparently, Marianne, we are cousins.
Oh my God.
I have no idea how or why, but that's kind of odd. So yes.
It's beyond odd considering the two of you are cousins.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess.
Does that mean I get free coffee now at the cafe? I don't
Oh,
know.
absolutely.
I wouldn't drink it, of
Don't-
course, in the library. I would
I
stay
was
in
just
the
gonna
cafe.
say, don't bring it back
No.
to the library with you, but-
Obviously, yes. But
So
You might
that's
not want to drink it at all.
oh, let me rethink
Wow.
that.
interesting thought, Chloe. All right, does anybody else have any questions? Anybody? No?
Christopher.
For those of you who are wondering, the specter of Andrew Smith is mysteriously absent this evening. I tried earlier in seance to connect with his spirit and I was unsuccessful. Hopefully he will return to us before the big reveal, but I just can't bank on anything at this point. Anybody else have any questions? Christopher, go ahead.
Okay, Marianne, since you seem to actually know your grandmother a little better than Amy does, the name Desdemona, what nationality is that?
Well,
Can I answer that?
yes.
Shakespearean.
No, you can't answer that.
Venetian.
Yes. I'm not entirely sure of her original nationality. She's visited so many different countries. but her main love was the library here. So, yeah, everything she did was for the library, as do I. Everything I do is for the library as well.
So it sounds like Desdemona and Andrew shared a commonality, which is many stamps in their passports.
Mhm.
I would say my grandmother was that way. Yes. And now I'm so thrilled because I have a family member here, and Amy.
I never
Yeah.
knew because my grandma never visited. Apparently she was busy running around the country, the world,
Yes,
or
yes.
sitting in libraries. I don't know, but yeah.
At least you'll have someone to visit you in prison.
Why would I be
Wow.
this thief? Why would I be the one ending up in prison?
Yeah. Go ahead, Mark.
Just out of curiosity, I pulled up my reference book that has listings of names and the origin. Desdemona is from the Greek and it means unlucky.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
So
Isn't that
perhaps this is the clue about Amy and Marianne. You may inherited your grandmother's lack of luck.
Well, she did spend a fair amount of time in Greece at one point.
There you go.
well, there you are. So, wow.
I also had a question for Chloe, if I may.
Go
Sure.
ahead.
All right. Now that you have confessed on that night of wild confessions to your true background, when you stole that pocket watch, did you have like a replica that you put in its place so that it wouldn't be noticed as a theft at the time when everybody else was focused on that Bible?
No, I figured that people would
She's frozen.
Kind of broke up.
okay.
Try
I-
again, Chloe, because we lost you there for a second. Try again.
I did not have a replica made. That would have taken a lot of time and taken some of my profit out to have to commission such a thing. Just figured that the chaos would cover me.
Okay. So Jennifer is mentioned in the chat that Gary is right. If you want to follow the Shakespeare angle, Desdemona was in Othello, which took place in Venice. So it could be pointing to a background that contributes to the theft and the murder. It's an interesting idea.
Now, just a thought with that. Desdemona, doesn't she at least isn't she accused of adultery? What if she had an affair with the king of Sardinia? I don't know, just throwing that out there.
There's a lot to that idea.
Y'all
But-
trying for that inheritance, aren't you?
Maybe we get some of this thing Melinda thinks she gets. I don't know.
Well, my grandmother
that's-
was an intriguing person.
That's an interesting angle. I mean, if you think about Melinda is searching for her family history, and if there's any connection, the three of you may be sharing more than you would like. And
Which
it was
could.
revealed that Ruby was in on that treasure hunt as well. So
Now, it was also revealed, I'm just thinking that Marianne was the one who bought this manuscript, not knowing what it was and then hiding it in the library. What if she had a clue that maybe it had to do with her grandmother, which was apparently my grandmother, and
what would that be motive for killing Andrew?
I don't know, but it's
I
interesting.
don't know either, but it is an interesting point.
If she realized that he had it, that she wanted it back.
Yeah,
Well,
but murder's a
I
long
did
way to
want
go to
that.
retrieve a book, don't you think? I mean,
yes, I did want it back. I wanted to broker a deal for it with the proceeds going to the library, because all my proceeds and everything I do goes to the library, straight to Jules.
lining-
Jules
lining
as in
Jules' pocket.
Julie Nelson, or Jules as in diamonds and rubies? Just to
Oh,
clarify.
yeah. To Miss Nelson. All my proceeds from fundraising and from my properties that I own, my cafes, bars, all those profits go to Miss Nelson for the library.
Okay. Good intentions all around. Mark, love, go ahead.
I'm looking at Jules and wondering, because she admitted the other night that she had actually gotten some precious gems as a result of her previous work here. Were those appraised, and did that give you any indication as to what would happen if you could get your hands on that manuscript by killing off Andrew? That would free up and you could get more.
You asked if they were appraised, and I did get them appraised. And they were significantly important. They're more than I make in a year. But I really didn't feel the need to steal the book, because I was going to be getting another donation if I just returned the book to the owner, which I didn't realize was Marianne at the time. So for me, it didn't really matter what the book was worth, because I was already going to get rewarded for babysitting it for 3 years. So
Yeah, you already realized, you came to the understanding that the gems were worth more than you thought the book was. So it
Yeah.
stands to reason that you wouldn't really be interested in stealing
Now-
the book, although who knows?
I just
Yeah.
have to protest with what you said. You were not the one babysitting it for 2 years. I was babysitting it. I should get those jewels, just to point that out. Okay, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, to me, that would give Jules the motive to kill Andrew, because somehow she tipped to the idea that he was actually holding on to that manuscript. And if she'd get her hands on it, instant
They-
payback.
That is an interesting idea. I mean, we do know that Andrew knew quite a bit about antiquities. So, and he did contact her earlier to ask to do a reading and signing event at the library, and she denied him. So maybe she knows more than she's letting on.
well, the thing is, though, I was fairly confident it was Chloe, just because she's so quiet, and sometimes I feel like the quiet ones know more than the ones who talk a lot. So I was betting my money that it was Chloe. So I was completely floored that Andrew had it. So
Well, but I mean, Andrew's really good. Andrew's a really good example of people who are not quiet knowing a lot. So, you know, Deborah Reed is not tremendously quiet. I've heard her in public, and she knows quite a bit. And I here's the other thing. I want to know, Christopher and Deborah, you guys had a special liaison. So what was the deal? I mean, were you guys in cahoots about this book and then together decided that it would just be easier to extinguish Andrew to get your hands on the book?
Well,
Is that the agreement you guys came to?
Life would just be easier without Andrew, because, you know, he's loud and obnoxious, but that's just me and my opinion. But anyway, no, we had a deal. Like, he'd get a promotion, I'd get the Pulitzer. I mean, it was a win-win for everybody.
So Christopher,
Yeah,
you're
the
trying
two
to
of
be
us.
true to your badge and not trying to kill anybody. Is that what we're led to believe here?
More of a quid pro quo.
It
Deborah wanted
seems like
information. I was able to help, and she was able to assist in the investigation.
both of you, though, finding a book is a good thing, but finding a murderer or witnessing a murder could add to your Pulitzer Prize story or to add to your cred as an undercover officer. So it was worth more to have a murder involved than just a theft.
I know,
For
it's
those
like
of
we're
you
making it up as we go along.
You know, sometimes improv is the way to go. I mean,
I mean,
It
technically,
really-
we're MacGyver here.
I love MacGyver. He is like the bomb. And so, yeah, totally. MacGyver. Yep.
So
They didn't
That's
answer
what
that
we're doing
question.
here.
Just so you know.
Chloe,
Pretty sure we answered it vaguely.
vaguely. Chloe, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering if anyone here has an extensive, especially signed collection of Andrew's books, because we know that books are much more valuable when the author is dead. So I wonder if maybe that was a motivation for someone.
Probably not this author.
I was gonna say, was he able to sell any copies of the book? Because he couldn't sell any around here. So
Well, and as I understood, he only had the one copy. What kind of author would go to a library with only a single copy?
The one who uses the dust jacket to cover up the book he's stealing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think this idea of Andrew being an author is a dubious suggestion. I I don't know. Do we want to call him an author? I don't know. If he's only got the one book.
I mean,
It's really a
technically,
book.
anybody who writes is an author. So but
Well,
Hey,
alright.
but he
is he
literally
worth much?
just he literally only had the dust jacket. I mean, like he didn't even have the book. So
That's true.
Unless he
We don't
wrote
even
the
know if he
dust jacket.
wrote. Yeah.
Unless
Well,
Christopher, what? Christopher,
Unless he
what-
wrote the dust jacket.
He wrote
Back
that.
cover.
is how many words? The word something antiquities, like 3, 4, I don't know. Yeah.
The Way of Antiquities.
Oh, so 3 words. Yay! You got 3 words.
Gary
4.
says he still had to fill out some of the things in the story. He was still doing research. That's why the book wasn't actually published yet. He just had the dust jacket. He was still working on it. That's a solid theory right there. I like it. Leave it to a Bostonian to think up that one. Okay, anybody else have anything? We have time for probably just 1 or 2 more questions. Anybody?
I
got
guess
one.
just. Oh, go ahead,
Yeah. Whom? Mark.
Mark.
Mark
Okay.
Love. Go ahead.
I keep thinking about Chloe's theft of that pocket watch and the fact that Andrew was there at the time, along with the Gutenberg Bible or whatever else was stolen. And I'm wondering if it's possible that Andrew observed Chloe absconding with this valuable item and perhaps was trying to lord it over her in some way. And that was her motive
Blackmail.
to kill him.
Blackmail. It's like the
That's-
oldest thing in the book.
It's older than
There's
the
nothing
book.
in the book. It was just a dust jacket.
And it's true. Andrew didn't actually have the book with him. He simply wrapped his dust jacket around the Sardonic manuscript. So we don't even know that he had another book. He could have placed the book on the shelf as a placeholder somewhere when he initially came into the library, but I just don't know. Chloe, do you have anything to say about all that Mark just postulated?
It's an interesting theory, but I have nothing to say about that.
Okay. All right, one last question. Mackenzie says the thought of blackmail made Miss Reed's face light up. It did indeed.
I think it just does that, but
I think
Anything nefarious makes my face light up.
well, that's true enough.
You and I
Okay.
gotta talk.
All right. I think that is all we have time for today, everybody. Thank you so much for all of your probing questions and your fun discussion. And tomorrow, I'm sure when Andrew watches the replay, his spirit will have much to convey. Just a hunch. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have 4 days remaining. That's right. 4, count them, 4 days remaining until the big reveal on February 28th. Be sure to make sure you sling your accusations by noon on the 28th to get your chance at winning some really super snazzy prizes. All of the replays are linked on our website, so if you're unsure about some details or you'd like to connect some of the dots that you missed earlier, go back and watch the replays. You can access them on pagespromotions.com. Okie dokie. Our scavenger hunt. I've been saying it all month long. There's no possible way I could have done this without Riddle Master Jacob Bullen. I I am not that smart, folks. Jacob did a massively amazing job on the riddles, and he's the reason we're playing this game. So thank you, Jacob Bullen. Our dead body chalk outline is increasing with the number of detectives who have gotten to the heart of the case. Andrew is now at 178, Deborah at 170, tied with Amy also at 170. Ruby is at 114, Chloe at 113, Jen Rinaldi at 111, Emma Palova at 103, and Marianne Whelan also at 103. The Hand of Doom, here it is, you guys. Mark Love is number one, pointy finger guy. Christopher Gare, then Jennifer Rains and Jules Nelson, Mandy Joe and Mark McCraw, with Melinda rounding out the thumb at 81 points. We have had 551 pairs of eyes on this craziness all month. This is pretty fun. There's the witness ledger. Let's see if we can get the numbers up higher for the last few days that we have on this. My curiosity is to see how many people we can get in the room on the 28th for the big reveal. But of course, I'd like as many as we can in between now and then as well. We are going to give away books on the Spinning Wheel of Happiness, as we do every night, because giving away loot is just fun. If your name lands on the Spinning Wheel of Happiness, please send me an email to diana@pagespromotions.com with your mailing address so that we can make sure to get those books out to you. Books will be delivered, they'll be postmarked by March 5th so that you can look for them. If you're ever wondering, what is that email address again that I'm supposed to send my address to claim my prize, look right above my head. Diana@pagespromotions.com. Pretty simple. While I am preparing the Spinning Wheel of Happiness for its last and final check, our lightning round question for this evening. I am very curious how many of you have read a book more than once, and if you have, what was the title of that book? We are always trying to expand our TBRs, and it's super fun to add more titles to that list. I know Andrew is constantly buying new books, and he doesn't want to be left without stuff to read, and I know I'm the same way. So I'd like to go around the room. A book that you've read more than once, and what was the title? Mark Love, we're starting with you, and no, it cannot be a textbook.
Wouldn't do that to you. Actually, there are a number of books that I've read more than once. It'll be a few years in between, and I'll stumble upon it, and I'll go, "Oh, I haven't seen that in a long time." The last one I did was 11/23/63 by Stephen King. Excellent.
Not one I've read
King,
yet.
it's like this.
Okay.
JFK assassination, and the guy goes back in time to try and stop it. Very well done.
That sounds like super fun. How did I miss that?
Don't know.
I wasn't paying attention, clearly. Christopher Gare.
Okay, the novelization for the film Pretty in Pink, but let me just say, I was in high school when I read it multiple times and gay.
He was.
Okay.
gay.
So we forgive you. But I gotta say, it does tell us a little bit more about you. Marianne Whelan, a book that you read more than once.
Oh, geez. Harry Potter.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah, and 50 Shades of Grey.
I'm sorry. I mean, not the subject matter, but the editing in that book is just so poorly done. I don't have a problem with the subject matter. It's the editing that I have a problem with. It just rubs me the wrong way. Deborah Reed.
I don't know. There were a lot, but especially in high school and after, I think I mentioned it before, but The Hawk and the Jewel by Lori Wick. I mean, I read it so much that like the cover had fallen off and it was in tatters, literally.
Very cool. Chloe.
Read a lot of books again. Probably one of the most though is The Reptile Ball by Jacqueline O'Neill, which is just a wonderful rhymey lizardy thing that's very fun.
Okay,
for when you have
lizardy,
kids.
not snake thing, lizard thing.
No, there's some snake stuff too.
Okay, I
There's
won't
some
be
snake
reading
stuff
that
too.
book. Okay, won't be reading that book. Amy Kelso.
Again, there's a
No,
lot of
Amy,
them,
it
but
cannot be a textbook. I mean, I
Ah,
know that the teacher in you wants to come out and do that, but no textbooks allowed.
I haven't. Anyway, but the one I used to have a habit every year on Lent, I read the Tao Te Ching.
Okay, wow. I'm
Just to
just
be
curious,
Confusing religions, mixed match.
confusing why it would come up on Lent.
We're just on Lent and it brought it up. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I was
Man-
raised Catholic and then I became Taoist and
Okay. Okay, you and I are gonna have lunch and have that conversation.
perfect.
Mandy Joe.
Hunt for Red October. Multiple times.
That is a good book. It is.
I'm a
good.
Tom Clancy junkie.
Okay, you're allowed. Deborah Harris.
The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. It's a fantasy novel. Not many people have heard of it.
Wow. Mark, did you know about that one?
Yes, I did. I've read that a long time ago when it first came out.
Oh, cool. Gonna have to look up that one. Jules Nelson.
I've read a lot of them, but I guess the one I read the most is Jane Eyre by Emily Bronte. So I read that one a lot. I've also read a lot of the younger kids stuff with my kids, so Harry Potter's and the Hunger Games, stuff like that. But when I go back to is always Jane Eyre.
Cool. Diana Duell, what about you?
The only books I read more than once are children's books when I read them to children, but novels, there's too many of them. I just keep going.
Yeah, you have enormous bookshelves that are filled with stuff. I saw your last picture of it. It's astounding to me that you collect the way you do, but we as indie authors are tremendously grateful that you are part of our family. So thank you very much for doing that. Jen
You're welcome.
Rinaldi, what book have you read more than once? Oh, you're muted. Unmute.
Grace Draven's Eidolon.
Also a title I've not heard of. I'll have to look for that one. Heidi Roop, what about you?
I read a lot multiple times, but probably the most is Lemony Snicket's. So the whole series, going through that back and forth with my daughter.
Lemony Snicket's great writing. It's really good stuff. I especially like his pen name. Very cool. Jennifer Wilcock, what's a book that you've read more than once?
I really hate rereading, so I don't even hardly remember. Maybe in Green Gables when I was a kid, like unless I'm forced to, like when I was in a class, I never reread. I just can't do it.
Okay, that's fair. Mark McCraw, what about you?
Mute.
Yeah. Brown Bear, by Bill Martin. I've read that multiple times with the kids.
Okay. Gary Floyd.
I wouldn't say about rereading a whole book. What I basically would do is reread passages that I really like a lot, and I want to incorporate it in my own thing of seeing how it's put together. One of them that I can think of is For Whom the Bell Tolls. I also like certain short stories by Fitzgerald and Somerset Maugham.
Okay. Awesome. Preeti, is there a book that you've read more than once?
I usually don't read more than once, but when I was young, I remember I read The Old Man and the Sea, I think twice or something. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Jacob, what about you?
It's a series. It's the Codex Alira by Jim Butcher. The first book is called The Furies of Calderon.
Okay, will you send that to me in a Facebook message later so that I can go look for that series?
Of course.
I'm trying to adapt myself to reading series because it's usually something I avoid. So when somebody recommends one, I'm trying to get myself to read them. So
You can always loan it to you maybe you're out.
Mackenzie, can you put yours in the chat so that Amy can read it for us? Deb McPeak, what about you?
The Expected One by Kathleen McGowan, but I have a comment for Mark Love. 11/22/63, that's like 600 and some pages. I can't believe you could read it more than once. And also, did you see the movie?
I have not seen the movie, and when I get hooked in a book like this, and it is more than 600 pages, it's actually
609 or something.
849.
Holy moly.
So
But anyhow, see
it's
the
weight
movie.
training as well as reading. You keep picking it up and doing throws.
But you got to remember too, all of J.K. Rowling's books are 400 plus.
Yep.
So,
Well, Stephen King usually isn't that fat.
Wow,
He gained some weight, you know?
He's getting on in years. Yeah. Mackenzie says that Yana, I have read at least once a week, and my sister's book, An Amber Heart. And in case you're wondering, Yana is written by Amy Kelso, just in case you're wondering. Christopher Gare, are you still with us? Is there a book that you've read more than once? Don't know if he's still with us. Richard McNeil, if you would put your answer in the chat for us, pretty please. And Dana Storino, would you like to tell us?
Yes, I would. I feel like Christopher, and I'm like, I don't really read books over, except there was one book when I was in grade school called Too Young to Go for Boys, and I read that about 6 times, maybe more. I don't know. I really love that book.
All right. And I was just reminded, Christopher, you already answered this wacky question. You know, here's what happened. My screen jumped and you moved. So, okay. And Emma Palova, what about you? Is there a book you've read more than once?
100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
I have heard that that's a spectacular story. I have not had a chance to read it.
It is fascinating.
Richard tells us Empress Orchid by Anchi Min. Am I pronouncing that right, Amy? Sympathetic account for the Empress Dowager Cease of China. See, okay. Christopher, you're the Chinese stuff. Can you read Richard's answer and make sure I'm pronouncing stuff correctly? Because I don't think I am.
That's more Mandarin. I can understand more Cantonese.
Okay, all right.
That's a good answer.
It is a good answer, by the way.
You know how I got out of that?
That is a really good answer.
Nicely done.
And just in case you're curious, I have read the Tao of Pooh and the Day of Piglet by Hoffman probably 167 times. I keep giving those 2 books away as gifts. So I don't actually even have copies of them in my library right now because I gave the last ones to my son. If you get a chance, read those.
I love that book. The Tao of Pooh is great.
If you're a Pooh fan, you gotta read these. If you like A.A. Milne, you gotta read these books. These are almost as good as the original Pooh. All right. Thank you thank you everyone very much. See, it's been a long month, guys. For answering our question. And tomorrow when Andrew comes back into the room, we will ask him, but my guess is his list is going to be very long. So we are going to get to the spinning wheel of happiness. Before we do, I would like our authors one more time to hold up their books, pretty please. Jacob Bullen, your book, Betrayer. There we go. And Deborah Reed, your book, The Disaster Called Rue Taylor. Yay! Okay, awesomeness. I'm going to share my screen, get the spinning wheel up on the thing and do the thing and make sure the sound is turned on to remember to do the, okay, here we go. So first we're going to give away Jacob's book, and then we will give away Deborah's book. Here we go. Spinning number, you guys can see this, right? Mark?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. Okay, here we go. Spinning number 1. It's a good thing to come to these things, because even when you only come once, you win stuff. Congratulations, Richard. And here we go, spinning wheel number 2. Good job. I was concerned there for a second that we
I was too. Like, Deb, are you going to win your own book?
Okay. Thank you ever so much, everybody, for playing our wacky game, for hanging out and sharing a part of your evening with me and the rest of us every night this month. This has just been a blast and a half, and I can't wait to see what comes next. You guys are going to have so much fun. If you won tonight on the spinning wheel of happiness, I'm going to throw this up there one more time because, you know, Amy. Spinning wheel of happiness. If your name arrived on the wheel tonight, send me your mailing address to diana@pagespromotions.com, and we will get those books out in the mail to you very shortly. Before we go, and again, suspects still hang out after, but before we go, does anybody have any parting words they'd like to offer before we head out the door? Wow. And a silence hung over the room, thick as molasses.
I do have to say, it seems like this session was a little more calm because there was no ghost around.
There's some truth to that. Yeah, I would agree there.
And Melinda wasn't here either, so.
Yep.
And
I will say
Ruby was
I'm a
out
little-
dancing the night away, so clearly murder is not a priority for her.
Oh, wait, there is a ghost in the chat. Okay.
Okay, there we go. I don't know how you people do that with the quick little things. I don't know how you do that. Okay, anybody else have anything before we go? No? All right, awesome. Okay, we're going to be back here again tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Don't miss it, because there's going to be fun stuff tomorrow. So, as there is every night. But tomorrow, we're just getting closer. We're almost there, guys. Have a wonderful night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.